Welcome back. Let's talk about bullying. I like to talk a lot about bullying on the show because we're just losing too many children to this. And this week was really no different. A Detroit community is mourning the suicide of a 7-year-old boy, 7 years old. Authorities say he was bullied and teased and became depressed over the recent separation of his parents. Chauncey Glover. Such a sad story. Bullying can drive people to a very dark place in their life. I've reported on these stories far too often. And for all those parents or kids looking for some answers, well, we're glad you're watching, because in studio with us, we have psychologist Erik Fisher, also known as Dr. E. So let's talk about this. I mean, what is going on inside the mind of a child who is being bullied? What happens in the brain?
Well, I think what we have to look at is the idea of what are the resources they feel they have? Because when somebody feels bullied, they feel threatened. You know, when I talk about the idea of bullying and even the idea of suicide as this happens, is we have to look at how people feel in life. And in life, I say we have victims, persecutors, and rescuers, and beyond that, instigators. Somebody who feels bullied becomes a victim. You know, the bully becomes the persecutor. And in this way, this child is starting to see the world as a threatening place. The fewer resources they feel they have to help them to make it through life is the fewer options they feel they have. So often what I say, when somebody wants to commit suicide, they feel like there are no options and they just want the pain to stop and they don't see any other ways.
You know, but I mean, I've covered these stories, and I've covered 12 and 13-year-olds who have done this very same thing, taken their lives. But a 7-year-old, does a 7-year-old even understand what they're doing, that this is going to end their life?
You know, it's going to depend in part on his life history. You know, what has he experienced and what has he seen around him? So if he's experienced or seen death around him, he may understand the permanence of it. But it seems like I would wonder if there's some impulse issues here. You know, men are more likely to, and boys are more likely to attempt suicide and complete it. Women are more likely to have attempts for suicide, and girls, and it not be completed. It's more of a cry for help. So that's what we have to consider here, too.
So is there anything a parent who might be watching today, who maybe is convinced that their child is being bullied, what can a parent say to save their child's life, to convince them, sit them down and tell them it will get better?
You know, when we look at our own lives and we see kind of the dark days of our soul, so to speak, you know, I think we can use some of those examples with our kids and not give them all the details, but say, you know, there were times in my childhood when I felt this way and this happened in my life and this is what I did to work through it. We have to see that it's our role as a parent to help our kids to see their way through these things and to help empower them and give them strategies and ways to support them. Make sure they get counseling. Make sure you're talking to the teachers and seeing what's happening in school, as well as making sure the teachers are able to report back to you what's going on and seeing that people in their life are significant. In this situation where he's going through a separation of his family, the difficulty might be, where's my dad going to be? We don't know anything about his relationship with his father, the relationship with his mother and sisters. So there are all these other factors we have to look at, and we have to make sure, like I said, that there's support across the board in different areas of their life.
Just so tragic, a 7-year-old. Erik, I do want you to stay with me because I want to continue the conversation with you and bring us some more tips for parents at home, and we're going to talk about the signs that all parents should be looking for.
So I went to a lot of different schools, and I remember there was some tension sometimes when, you know, it wasn't so simple just negotiating your way from one class to another when the bell rang. You know, that there was tensions ran really high. I was involved in busing, and, you know, so I've experienced that and understand it. You know, and anybody that's experiencing that on a daily level, you can see why they can just sink into the great depths, because when you're just trying to get by as a kid in a school, you can't think. All you're thinking about, how am I going to get to my next class without running into these guys or this situation? And you can't even concentrate on what you're supposed to be. And I really hold the teachers responsible, because you can see what's happening out there. You can bring that to a stop in my mind.
And we're back now with psychologist Erik Fisher. So that was Kevin Costner talking about being bullied himself. But bullying, as we know, can lead to depression. That's why so many kids are taking their lives. What are some signs that parents can look for?
Well, if we're looking for issues of depression, we want to look for changes in mood. We want to look for if they're withdrawing from situations. Are they maybe getting upset or crying more frequently? In younger kids, though, what we sometimes see is an increase in hyperactivity, because kids don't know what to do with that energy or that emotion. So sometimes they'll avoid by acting maybe a little goofy or situations like that, or trying to be funny to make light. We look at our situation of having our real, our feel, and our ideal self. The real is the one that we present, that we really interact with the world with, that other people see. Our ideal is what we want to try to present. Kids are often learning to present their ideal at earlier ages. And the feel is what we really feel inside, and that's what we're not getting to.
So that's what parents should look for, but we know that if a child is being bullied, a lot of them aren't coming forward. They're not telling school officials,
Right.
they're not telling their parents. Why don't kids come forward? Are they afraid of something?
Well, we look at our issue of power in our culture, and being bullied is somebody who wants to bully people wants to look strong. I talk about 4 dichotomies: good and bad, right and wrong, strong and weak, and win and lose. And when you have people who want to look strong, it's about having power over people. That comes from all over our culture. So if I'm feeling weak and I feel like it's not getting anything, I don't want to show it. I feel shame, embarrassment, humiliation. And I think in my culture, if I want people to love me, I can't look that way. Who's going to love me if I feel that way? So I have to hide that.
So it almost makes it even worse. They make themselves
Exactly.
feel worse if they're going to come forward.
Exactly.
What about boys and girls? Is there a difference in terms of how bullying makes them feel or how they bully?
Well, I'd written a blog a couple years ago called Bullying Pigtails, where I actually talked about the emergence of girls and bullying and why that happens. And what's happening is we see where girls were more socialized and women were more socialized in the past to look good, they're being more socialized to look strong because they're playing in the same playing fields, they're in the classroom, they're in the boardroom, and we're competing, men and women are competing for the same positions of power in a lot of ways. So we're subtly and obviously socializing our girls more to look strong. You sometimes have your queen bee that might lead the bullying in girls situations, and you have sometimes almost a pack mentality, but you are getting more overlaps in the girls being more aggressive and being more physical in these things. And I think also that goes back to the home. We have to look back at our attachments. Our attachments are crucial to the development of healthy kids and healthy adults. And the quality of those attachments I see waning. And that's why I also think we see an increase in bullying, too.
Yeah, because it certainly it can begin at home or anywhere else. And I know you talk to a lot of kids who have been bullied, and there's certainly a common theme there, right, among all of them. Dr. E, thank you. Nice to have you in studio this morning.